Hi, good afternoon and welcome to 15 Minutes in the Forest. Today's segment will be on reforestation. I'm Jason Fisher, Central District Extension Forester, joining you again. Thanks for being with us today. Behind me we have a cutover that was harvested a little over 18 months ago and was just replanted, and we're going to show you the planting crew at work. It's a beautiful sunny day and it's springtime. And behind me we have some property that was recently clear cut and planted back in pine. So we're going to show you some video of some planting crews and kind of what goes on with that, as well as some information on small scale planting at a lower level. So this is large scale we're starting out with. I will tell you also that I did some research, and in Virginia each year annually of the land that is harvested, approximately half of that is planted back. The numbers that we have is around 200,000 acres a year is harvested, and that's thinning as well as clear cutting. But in general, about half the land that's cut is planted back. And some people ask why that is. Well, the short answer of that is economics. Some property, pine is not the goal. They're trying to regenerate hardwood naturally by the stump, which we'll show you a picture of here in a bit. And natural regeneration is the most effective way to regenerate hardwoods. Planting research that I did on hardwoods, survival rates for bare root seedlings, a good estimate is around 40%. And you say, why is that? Well, a lot of sites you have stumps that already have a root system that outcompete those seedlings. So dry summer and they don't make it. That's one reason why survival is low. And the other reason is hardwoods don't follow hardwoods in succession. And basically, over time in succession, when pines and early successional species come into a site, we call those pioneer species. And behind me, I could see some sweet gum and Virginia pine that were killed from sprayed as a site prep here before these pines were planted, because pines need full sun. They can't have the competition from competing trees. The other thing I want to share with you is, as far as why more land isn't planted back, on the economic side, oftentimes run into just poor planning. A management plan is a must with timber management. And what I mean by that is a written management plan, a stewardship plan, what have you, as well as just thinking forward down the road long term when you're dealing with tree farming, let's use that word. The economics behind that are in a clear cut, there's money gained from the timber sale, obviously. And generally, I tell landowners if they set aside 10% of that total income, that should cover the cost of reforesting and any release work that they do. That's pretty close. So back to the 200,000 acres harvested in Virginia each year, about 2/3 of that figure are total harvest or clear cuts, so about 130,000 acres. The other 1/3 is in some type of partial harvest, whether that's a thinning or selection. In 2020, Department of Forestry recorded a little over 83,000 acres of tree planting in Virginia. So that's about 60% of the acreage that was in the total harvest category. As we know, timber harvest is just the first step toward a new forest. So the other 40% would be natural regeneration of hardwood and pine. There are several tools used to reforest land, from left to right: a hodad, a hardwood planting bar, and 2 general planting bars typically used for pine. You will see this crew is using the hodad.
Here, the crew boss checks for periodic locations across the site for spacing accuracy as well as sound planting depth. Okay, we'll take a walk here and look at this brand new seedling that was just planted about a week ago. We've been getting good rain and expecting more, so it's really good growing season so far for 2021 here in Southside. Okay, so we step right across the road here and we walk into this stand. That's about 3 years old. I said 4. I checked my notes. And so the site characteristics as far as the soil and the aspect and other things are very similar to where we just came across the road back here behind us, okay? And so this is what we can expect to see behind us in this new site in a short amount of time. And these trees are just about to do what we call jump and grow. They've gotten their heads above the broom straw and the weeds. There's not a lot of competing hardwood sprouts in here because this was sprayed and site prepped prior to planting. And you can see it's doing really well. I have a good friend that owns this property. So right now I'm not trespassing. Now some may ask why we replant and don't just allow trees to come back naturally. Well, behind me, this is why. This stand right here is regenerated in naturally from the parent trees up above it that you see. This is an old deck area where harvest was done. And there's probably 1,500 trees to the acre there, and it will just stagnate and not really grow or be productive at all. So whether you want to make the argument of storing carbon or just being healthy and growing, we like to go the healthy route because no one complains about having healthy trees. That's what we want. So this is why we reforest, because we have some control over spacing. Mother Nature will reforest it, but it will take a lot longer because the trees need room to grow. Reforestation also occurs at smaller scales to include volunteer programs in Virginia, like this Master Gardener group planting longleaf pine at a demonstration site in South Boston, Virginia. We also have the Growing Kids and Trees program in Virginia, where over 300,000 hardwood seedlings have been distributed to youth since 2008. Sponsoring organizations are listed on the upcoming slides. Hardwoods are bare root in this situation, which means we know survival is at best 40 to 50%, but yet there's a lot of responsibility that goes with planting a tree as well as being good stewards of the environment. Tree tubes are an important piece with hardwood plantings, particularly bare root. There's been a lot of research on containerized seedlings having better survival, but ultimately, long term, the rates are very similar based on the research that I found. Another term that we use is called afforestation, and that's when open, abandoned fields are planted into trees. There's been a considerable number of acreage planted in Virginia and other states in this method. All right, so we're here transplanting our containerized seedling. Key thing is this: here's your fescue. So I've scalped that off. You want to remove that grass layer with your shovel or your spade. Get that out of the way. You want to dig the hole, dig out and loosen dirt at least twice the width of your root ball. That's kind of a general rule. Okay. The other key thing a lot of people miss, it's real important. The bottom of your hole, go ahead and take your fist or even your shoe and flatten that out. It needs to be a hard bottom and packed. People miss that. The reason for that is so when you do plant it and water it, the tree doesn't settle. And if it settles down, it'll begin to pull water around the collar, and that attracts bacteria. As we know, dirt and water and heat do that. So we got our hole dug. We got our bottom solid. Here's our seedling. It's going to be an oak tree here. And so I place it in the hole. I can see where the bark and the root collar here, you'll see that change in color. You want that right at the soil surface. So this is a little deep. So I'm going to add a little dirt. That's the other thing. Don't feel like you need to use just the dirt from the pot. It needs the natural soil. You can mix the two. That works. Remember, it's a new environment. So make that bottom solid. what I do is pack a little bit of dirt around the very base of the roots first. Take your fist and kind of punch that in. That way the tree will kind of stand on its own at that point. You can add water now if you'd like. In this case, the soil's very wet here, very moist, so I'm not going to do that just yet. So then we put in the rest of our dirt, and we want to pack that in. You don't need to necessarily stomp on it, but basically I've packed the very bottom. So we're going to bring our natural dirt back in around the base, because that's what it's going to be growing in. And then some of the dirt from the pot, I'll just incorporate that a little bit and work that in as well, okay? So at this point, just mashing with your hand is good. Make sure the tree's upright and straight like you want it. Once you've got your dirt packed in around, now we can add a little water. Since this tree's going to be here a while, I'm going to help it out getting started and pack on, maybe throw in a little bit more dirt that I dug up on top at this point. All right. Now, so the last thing is our tree tube. So again, we got this short tube here, and there's deer that come up in this field at night, so we don't want our buds snipped out. So we're going to go with the taller tube. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge. I've already got my tent stake on here, but basically I have to take the tree and just work it in, just a little bit at a time. Ideally, you'd have a nice, 1-year-old seedling. I like the 2-year-olds, so if you're ordering trees and you see a 2-0 or even a 3-0, that's a 2-year-old or 3-year-old seedling. Most will be 1 year, but if you have a choice between the 1-0 and the 2-0, buy the 2-0. They're probably the same price. Even if they're not, they're worth it. More root system means a better chance of survival. Okay, lastly, we're going to plant a bare root seedling, and this applies for hardwoods and pine. This is where you see a lot of urban planting, small scale, probably about as small as you get, a tree in the yard, for example. Okay. First thing I want you to note is I've soaked my tree in a bucket of water overnight. That really helps if the ground's dry and you're not expecting rain for a while. It doesn't hurt it. Don't leave it in there too long being 3 days or more, because the adventitious roots, the little small, tiny guys here on the edge, will turn black and they'll begin to rot. But a few days is no problem. So I've soaked my seedling overnight. I'll take my planting bar that I have here, and we'll zoom in and show you how we get that in and talk a little bit about some of the problems with survival with bare root seedlings. All right, so here we are with our bare root seedling. Take our planting bar, gonna make a slit in the ground. Open that up a little bit. Take our bare root seedling here. Always take the roots and fold down with them. Put your tree all the way down. Shove in any roots that may be sticking out so they're not sticking straight up in the air. Those root tips are really important. Then bring your tree up to where the root collar and the bark, that color change, is right there at the soil surface. Should stand there for you. And then here's the key to survival of a bare root seedling. You come behind that tree. I know I'm out of frame, but I want you to see this. About 3 inches, and you're going to push down, and then you lean backwards until you see that tree start to rise up. Basically, you know that you've raised the dirt up to touch the bottom of those roots and close that air pocket, if there's one there. And then once you raise up a little, then you just shove forward, okay? And that mashes that soil against that root. Pull up on the tree. It's pretty taut. It's not moving. So now we got it planted. And so again, we come in with our tree tube for protection, and then you can use gutter pipe and slit it long ways and put it around the tree. The key thing to this particular tree tube is it's perforated, so it will bust open on its own and it's biodegradable. Okay, you only need that for a short period of time. And Katie's here, my crew boss, to approve of the planting job here and be sure we've done everything right. Right, Katie?